This is Access Ann Arbor.
My name is Elaine Roman. I am a Palestinian American, a citizen of United States. Also, I consider myself a citizen of humanity. I asked my husband, Jarius Abu Rumman, once, what is Balfour Declaration? He simplified it for me in Arabic. من لا يملك أعطى لمن لا يستحق. It means who does not own Palestine, give it to whom does not deserve it. My husband was a true Palestinian nationalist. He passed it on to my grandchildren, and especially my daughter Maha Saka, who lives in Bethlehem. He has taken over her father's nationalistic approach and has been active since 1991. Before my husband passed away, I was hosting local TV program on families. But after that, I followed my husband's footsteps and continued my programs on families and politics. Today, I am delighted and honored to have with us two patriotic Palestinians who remind me with my husband. They will tell us more about Balfour Declaration. And it's Mr. George Khoury and Dr. Ismail Noor. Mr. George Khoury, could you please tell us exactly what is Balfour Declaration? Who issued it?
I understand. Balfour Declaration was named after Arthur Balfour, who was the Minister of External Affairs of England at that time in 1917. And he issued a declaration in the name of the government. I'm going to read it, but because I don't know it by heart, I'm just going to read it from here, then put it on there.
Okay.
And it says the following. His Majesty's government view with favor the establishment in Palestine of a national home for the Jewish people and will use their best endeavors to facilitate the achievement of this object. It being clearly understood that nothing shall be done which may prejudice the civil and religious rights of existing non-Jewish communities in Palestine, or the rights and political status enjoyed by Jews in any other country. So it is really true what your husband said. It's somebody who doesn't own a piece of land, gave it to somebody who in reality doesn't deserve it because it's not theirs.
You're right,
And that declaration meant that England stands behind the effort of having the Jewish community establish a state, a Jewish state, in the land. Now, this has background. This has previous things behind it that things that will lead us into this declaration. I think Ismail wants to tell us how this happened.
That's true. This declaration came as a product of a process, actually. Started a long time before that, although the declaration itself is a process. Started in 1917 and ended in 1948. But I will talk a little bit about the before the declaration itself. The original thought of giving Palestine to a home state for the Jews came from Napoleon Bonaparte in 1799. At the time when he invaded Palestine, and was defeated on the outskirts of Acre.
Acre, Haifa, yeah.
No, Akka.
Akka, I'm sorry.
In that year, and he declared similar things as Balfour declared, were called upon the Jews to come back to Palestine and establish their home state under, which is very important, under the protection of France.
Wow,
So it is a competition, or it was a competition between France and Britain, which has nothing to do with Palestine itself by se, but they were competing on the raw materials of the world and how to conquer and occupy others' land from Southeast Asia, in particular in India, and Africa and the Middle East. So each of Britain and France were trying to cut off each other from reaching the point where they can trade and bring the spices and so forth. This is
The background.
the background of that. Then Britain actually overseeded France in that and occupied Egypt in 1882, and starting the process to come to the point where they gave this declaration in 1917.
But in reality, another step took place in between.
Yes.
Okay, and that is somewhere in the West, there was the idea of what are we going to do about this, what's so called at the time the Arab world, which extends all the way from the ocean all the way to the Arabian Gulf. Okay, and the agreement was that it has to put a wedge into the heart of this big real estate. And that wedge must have the characteristics of the Western governments, of the Western people. It has to be done that way to be able to control it in the future. And we're going to see in a few minutes how they are controlling it that. So what happened, another conference took place, which is?
This is the mechanism where Britain used to bring about a consensus among the European, because they were fighting among each other on the raw materials and the occupation of other lands and so forth. So they brought them together in a conference called the Imperial Conference of 1905, actually. It lasted 2 years and ended in 1907 and became known as the 1907 Campbell Conference, because the British minister who administered that and oversee the whole process was Campbell at the time, the foreign minister of Britain at the time. So the Campbell Conference of 1917 brought about the major European countries, 6 of them, and then later on brought also the Vatican. So the Vatican would be the religious aspect of the whole thing. And the Campbell himself asked the question to those participants: what are you going to do, what Europe is going to do about the Arab world, the so-called Arab world, from the Atlantic Ocean to the Gulf? They have the same, almost the same religion, they have the same language, they have the same history, they have all the components that make them one nation. So if they come about and started that process and become one nation, that would be a disaster starter for Europe altogether.
You know a lot. You know a lot of history about what happened to us. Did the Palestinian? You want to say something, but I want to ask you: what did the Palestinian do? Did they keep quiet?
No, this is before the whole process started.
This is before.
This is before. The Jews started to come to Palestine in 1882, and they established settlements in Palestine.
And we opened
with
the
money,
door for them.
with the money from Rothschild family
That's what I was gonna say
in
that.
Britain, and they established, I think, 33 little colonies and settlements in
Actually,
Palestine.
if you look at it, Balfour, Arthur Balfour, who did he give that declaration to? Was there a body to whom he gave that declaration? At that time, there was a billionaire called Rothschild. And he had
Rothschild, yeah.
And he has influence within the British government, a big influence, with his money and with other things, such as they made a fighting force in which they promised to help the Allies in any war against Turkey and Germany and Japan at the time, if the war happened, which it did happen, World War I. And they made some kind of fighting body that sided with the Allies. The Arabs did side with the Allies. And the promise of the West at the time, especially England, was to develop the Arab lands into productive lands and how to make industry and catch up with civilization in a way, because they were under the Turkish rule for 400 years, and the Turkish rule took them back to the point where they became non-productive. So instead of helping them, they betrayed them. They have Sykes-Picot Agreement in 1916, which is 1 year before the Balfour Declaration, and divided the Arab world into regions of influence, where they put Palestine under the mandate of Britain.
Actually, all of these were byproduct of the Campbell Conference. Campbell Conference came out with a set of recommendations, including creating a foreign body in the middle of the area, which came to be known as Arab world, and that body should be a copy of the Western values, or whatever you want to call it. And one of the recommendation is to do that, they have to divide the whole area, which translate into Sykes-Picot Agreement. This agreement was used to be before anybody knows about it. Used to be between three countries, three superpower at the time, France and Britain and Russia at the time. Fortunate enough for Russia, they pulled out from the agreement in 1916 because of the Bolshevik Revolution. And the Russian was the one who pronounced the agreement and told everybody about the agreement of Sykes-Picot. That did not stop the agreement. At the time, it was the end of World War I, and Britain and France came victorious with the Allied over the rest of the world, Germany and Ottoman Empire at the time, and they started to carve into the Arab worlds, to divide it into little states and what have you. And somebody said literally they were sitting on the table with a pencil and a piece of paper and draw the map, the lines as they are the borders of this state and that state and that state and that state.
I remember my husband also told me about the map. They put the map and they put the line on the map.
Exactly.
And this is how they divide it on the map, by talking.
They became a very deep wounds later on, these borders, okay? But at the time, at that, the very time, the Zionists, which is the political Zionist that was born in 1998 in the Bâle Conference, in Switzerland, and the Herzl was the head of that conference, and he declared that we're going to have a Jewish state in Palestine, and we have the support of England to do that, and of course the rest of the West. But one of his friends, the Herzl friends, he told him, "What are you talking about? the area of Palestine is something like so many square miles or square kilometers, and that's not going to be able to take the whole Jews in the world into that area, because they wanted to solve what was called the Jewish problem. Because they were discriminated in Europe. We never discriminated against them, but Europe did.
Right.
They were deeply discriminated in Europe, and they wanted to resolve that problem. So they told him, how can you put all the Jews that were available at that time into that area of Palestine? It will never work. Wake up, Herzl. It's not going to work. So what they suggested was make it Palestine and neighboring lands such as Jordan, South Syria, South Lebanon, and part of the Sinai Desert. Okay? So at that time even, they were planning to do that. But at the beginning, they did plan for the first 100 years, which is like almost like today is the 100 years from that time. And they said, okay, we're going to take part of the Arab world called Palestine and make it the homeland for the Jews. Yes, there was history for Judaism in Palestine at one time, 3,000 years ago.
I know, yeah.
But those were the original people, Arab.
They were Arab Jews.
Arab Jews,
Yeah.
who converted into Christianity when Jesus
Or Judaism before that,
came,
yeah.
and who converted, most of them converted to Islam when Muhammad came.
Yeah.
So it is the same people, the same population, just converted from one religion to the other, and has nothing to do with the European Jews.
With the European Jews, yeah.
Per se. By the way, the Zionism is a product of Britain, is not a product of Jews. In 1885 was the first time that the political Zionism became known, and it was known as British Zionism.
Yeah.
It was Herzl then took that and went to his first conference in Pal, Switzerland, and called for a Jewish state in Palestine. And the original mandate of Palestine is over Palestine and Jordan.
Yeah.
Then they reduce it
To Palestine.
to Palestine because they don't have the numbers to fill.
But the plan, I really found something interesting there. Elaine, may I?
Yeah, please do.
Like Ben-Gurion, he is the first president of the Jewish state, David Ben-Gurion. This is what he said, and this is quotation from his speech.
Yeah.
Okay, it said the present map of Palestine was drawn by the British mandate. The Jewish people have another map which our youth and adults should strive to fulfill, from the Nile to the Euphrates. So they have the plan.
They plan
to
it long
expand
time ago.
Yes, is to go beyond Palestine, and I think that is the plan that's coming from what I see happening in Iraq and Syria and Lebanon and Yemen, and
Right,
etc.
it's from
What
one
I see
country
it
to
is
the
they are
other.
planning for the coming 100 years for the second phase of Zionism to take its effect, and that will be Palestine and Jordan. That's the way I look at
and
it.
part of Syria, part of Lebanon,
Part of Syria and part of
and
Lebanon.
part of Iraq.
That's right.
From the start, from the very start in 1882, the movements in Palestine and the surrounding areas and in Egypt came about to revolt against Britain and against the Zionism when they knew about it. And those revolts repeated every once in a while, successfully and unsuccessfully and so forth. But the Palestinian people and the Arab people did not take this this issue laying down, and they fought, and they still fight.
But don't forget that the Palestinian part of the Arab world, they were weakened by the occupation of the Turkish Empire at the time. Okay, then when the mandate came, the British colonialism actually came in. They put some rules that I remember my dad and my grandfather, they were talking about it. If you have a knife as a Palestinian more than 3 inches long, to be arrested and not to come out. Yet the Jewish immigrant who doesn't know the land, he came from Europe on a boat, he used to have a gun. Not only he used to have a gun, but he was trained how to use that gun.
I know.
Okay.
They trained them, but they didn't allow the Palestinian to have a bullet.
A bullet.
Yeah,
That's right.
if you have a bear dog to
Yeah,
start
to shoot, for hunting.
hunting for bears, they kill you, they hang you really.
Yeah, that was hanging if they caught it.
But I want to ask Ismail, when you said it's not Jews, it's the
British.
it is British, but they make it name in the name of religion.
That's right. That's right. As the Crusades, they came to the area, fighting against the population with the name of religion, but they weren't. It wasn't religion per se. It was the competition among those countries to occupy and conquer the area, so they can have a free route
Trade.
to trade with India and with China and with Southeast Asia, because they were after the spices and what have you. It's not only the spices, but just one example. The British used the Indian manpower in their army. I mean, they armed them and they brought them to their colonies to
Which
fight
Indian?
for them.
Which Indian?
The Indians.
The India from India? Well,
From India, from India, yes, from India.
I believe the origin
From
of
India. And when the World War I broke out, Britain had a real problem with the Indians,
Yeah.
because most of the soldiers from India
Muslims.
were Muslims.
Yeah.
And they refused to fight against
Turks who are Muslims.
Who
Yeah.
are Muslims.
Yeah.
So they thought of a plan to go to the most known religious Muslim person in that area, which is the Grand of Mecca, Al-Amir Sharif Hussein, and they gave him some promises and so forth, and we will give you at least the Asia, Syria to have your state and so forth, just to have some way to convince the Indians
to come and fight Turkey.
See, the religious leadership of Mecca is with us. So come to fight Turkey, despite that Turkey is Muslims and so forth. That is why the so-called Hussein McMahon exchange of
Correspondence.
letters and correspondence and so forth came about. Otherwise, they even did not want that, and in their back of their minds, this is in the dream. I mean, they did not intend to do what they told Hussein they will do.
Yeah. I don't know how much time we have, but
we have another 5 minutes, I believe. And
very shortly, who was there at the time when they started this? Who was there in Palestine? There are numbers, and these numbers are within the British government today. Any researcher can go in and find these numbers, and that's when we wrote this, we made the same research. You see, so that will be some of the
demographics.
the demographics at the time.
I don't have that, but
we have some of those numbers, but where?
Yeah.
In there? In other words, there were like 5% of the land of Palestine was owned by Jews, only 5%. And less than 5%, like 3% of the population were Arab Jews.
Right.
Okay,
yeah.
not even immigrants, although they included a little bit of the ones that established some colonies, the 23 colonies, okay? But that's all what they have at the time, you know? And the rest were Arabs, and the Arabs were divided into two sections. One is Muslim, which is the majority, and one is Christian, which was about 25% at the time, okay? And when the United Nations was made, the League of Nations at the time,
Right.
again, it was set up. The whole thing was set up in such a way that when they wanted to divide the land between the new immigrants, like who came, like Ben Gurion himself, that came as an immigrant, and they took over, they gave the people 55% of the land although the population was
6%.
6%, and they gave them 55% of the land. This doesn't happen by accident. It was planned, it was designed.
By the way, the numbers of the
I just want to tell you 4 minutes remain.
yeah, the numbers of the start of the plan, because of that, because the Zionist movement gave some impression that is false, that Palestine has no people in it.
Yeah, the land without
And
people.
I forgot the
Land
name of-
without people for people without land.
I forgot who was the person who went to Palestine to see whether that is true or not, and came out with a line, a message that is one line, saying that the bride was already wed or something like that, which means that Palestine has its own people. And when they found out that, Herbert Samuel of Britain gave a recommendation to the parliament to put Palestine under the British mandate for some time to manipulate the situation and populate Palestine with the Jews. And they approved that. And that is how the whole thing came about.
When it is a plan and they want to fulfill that plan, they will do anything to fulfill the plan.
Yeah.
That was lying, that was cheating, that was stealing land, that was kicking people out of their homes. So in 1948, I was one of the people who was kicked out of the house. That's why I called myself a Nakba survivor.
Right.
Because at the time they kicked us out to make room for the new immigrants to come and take. Now we said to them, you are welcome to come and live with us, but why is it that you want to take it away?
And even in 1967 they did the same.
The same
I
thing.
was one of the
People who
of the
kicked
people
out in
who
67.
were kicked out in 1967. And they were in a hurry to kick as many as they can before any United Nations
Ceasefire or whatever,
declaration of ceasefire or things
we
like
have
that.
1 minute if you want to.
I want to make one point. Unfortunately, the British government is insisting on its wrongdoing to the Palestinians and to the Arabs up to this point. And they are planning to celebrate, quote unquote, celebrate the 100 years of Balfour Declaration. Unfortunately, again, the weak Arab countries, official countries, I mean, they are begging Britain not to do that because they don't want to awaken the feeling among the masses in the Arab world to do anything.
I wish we have more time.
I wish
really, you covered so many things, but we need more and more. And thank you, Mr. George Khoury, and thank you, Dr. Ismail Noor. You enlighten us with so much information about Balfour Declaration. Thank you for watching, and special thanks to CTN for giving us the opportunity to have this program.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.